why this plan is necessary to turn our economy around. Let's start with the state of play in Canada. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau and the NDP, everything costs more. Food prices have risen faster than at any time in 40 years. This is because of a carbon tax that has increased the cost for the farmers who produce the food, the truckers who ship the food, the grocers who sell the food. A carbon tax that is scheduled to quadruple over the next 5.5 years and which will go up on April 1st. Now, the NDP in this province has agreed to implement that tax, where in other provinces the local government has said no, and therefore Trudeau has imposed it from above. Here, the NDP has enthusiastically embraced the goal of raising energy prices on working-class families and has committed to go ahead with the hike this coming April 1st, a 23% carbon tax hike that will make life more expensive for everyday Canadians who are already unable to eat. This is happening in the context of 2 million annual visits, 2 million annual visits to food banks, a massive 32% increase over 8 years ago. And there are now a third of charities in Canada that are actually turning people away from food banks because they do not have enough food for them. So now we have a new phenomenon in Canada. It's a Facebook network with 8,000 members called the Dumpster Diving Network. This is a group of Canadians who share tips on how you can eat out of a garbage can in Canada. You only have to take a drive around communities across this country to see the tent cities that pop up. This existed in the downtown east side of Vancouver for some time, but the model of downtown east side has been spread right across the country. And I'm calling on NDP Premier David Eby and Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh to cancel the April 1st carbon tax hike, spike the hike, and axe the tax. This is a tax that, by the way, targets small businesses. One reason I chose this association to speak to is because you represent a lot of small businesses, entrepreneurial, bottom-up enterprises. BC actually has good associations for business. You guys represent the entrepreneurial sector, unlike some of their other corporate centers where they're focused on representing large protected corporations. You have entrepreneurial bottom-up businesses who are getting hit exceptionally hard. There has been no rebate for the carbon tax for small businesses. In fact, in BC, there's no rebate for anyone. But small businesses are going to pay this tax without having any compensation. And of course, they often, Trudeau will say, pass it on to consumers. Well, in some cases, you can't, because you're up against foreign competitors who don't pay the carbon tax. In other words, this tax is forcing our businesses to send their money and their jobs to other countries from whom we will import those things back to Canada. Let me give you a very simple example of this. Suntech Tomatoes in Manotick, in south of Ottawa, they grow tomatoes, as the name would suggest. They have greenhouses, and Trudeau charges the carbon tax on the CO2 they release into the greenhouse, even though that CO2 is absorbed by the plant life. Apparently, he missed that day in science class. It doesn't even go into the atmosphere. So the consequence of this is the government sends a price signal to Manotick customers to buy Mexican tomatoes, which have to be shipped right across North America, burning fossil fuels on trucks and trains. So the consumer buys the more polluting foreign tomato at the disadvantage of the greener and cleaner Canadian tomato. We are sending our jobs and our money to other more polluting countries in the process. In fact, the solution to fight climate change is to do precisely the opposite, to bring it home to our clean and our environmentally responsible industries in this country. Let me give you an example of how we can do that. Natural gas. We have 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas beneath our feet. We have clean hydroelectricity, cold weather, which allows us to liquefy it with 25% less energy than is used in the United States of America, because after all, converting gas into a liquid is a process of cooling it down. And what do we have in Canada? Our most abundant natural resource is cold weather. That you don't know anything about that in British Columbia, so no complaining for many of you. But you have no idea how cold it gets in Ottawa. In fact, last winter it was so cold, Justin Trudeau was seen with his hands in his own pockets. But think about the incredible opportunity we have here. So, you know, we have LNG Canada, approved by the previous Harper Conservative government, with the wise counsel of the great ministers Ed Fast, Carrie Lynn Finlay, and James Moore, who all championed the project for British Columbia. It came as a result of Ellis Ross, who was the chief of the HESLA at the time, and a future Conservative member of Parliament for Northern British Columbia. $40 billion, the biggest project in Canadian history of any kind, public or private. It will reduce millions of tons of greenhouse gases because it will be the lowest emitting facility in the world, and it will displace megawatts generated by coal in Asia. Now, this is the solution to reducing greenhouse gases. The biggest reduction in North America in greenhouse gases happened not because of a carbon tax in Canada, but because of the massive conversion of electrical facilities in the United States from coal to natural gas due to the fracking revolution. In the United States, the U.S. shifted from coal to gas. U.S. electricity produced 2,544 million metric tons in 2005. That reduced down to 1,724 metric tons of greenhouse gases. That's a 32% reduction in the amount of GHGs coming from the American electrical grid as a direct result of shifting from coal to natural gas. National Bank points out that if we were able to sell our natural gas to India, and we were able to replace their plan to double coal-fired electricity and instead use natural gas, it would reduce emissions so much that it would be the equivalent savings of 4 years of the total emissions of the entire Canadian economy. So get this straight. Of all the emissions we produce in 1 year, we could do 4 times those reductions by simply helping India expand its electrical generation using gas instead of coal. We have the 5th biggest supply of gas anywhere on Earth. We have the shortest shipping distance to both Asia and Europe. And we have the clean hydroelectricity in BC, Newfoundland, and Quebec with which to liquefy and compress that gas. We have the Germans who asked us to send them our natural gas. So did the Japanese. Trudeau told them there was no business case. Well, nobody told the Americans there was no business case. They built 7 liquefaction facilities in the last 8 years. Nobody told the Qataris. They've doubled their production and just signed a 3.5 million metric ton deal with the French. Nobody told the Germans. They just built an import terminal from concept to completion in 194 days, during which time we have not completed a single solitary export plant. My common sense plan will repeal C-69 and grant rapid permits to environmentally friendly and strategically important projects like LNG facilities. We will cool that gas to minus 161 degrees Celsius, ship it off to Asia to shut down dirty Asian coal-fired plants, and send it off to Europe to turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Bring it home. And we will speed up mining. We will speed up mining. Right now, it takes 18 years to get a mine approved in Canada. 40% longer in Canada than in the United States of America. 2 years longer than the average of major mining countries. That's why we do not produce any of the lithium that goes in the electric car batteries that you see in Teslas and other cars driving around our streets. We have the 5th biggest supply of lithium on Earth, and we only have one operational mine, which, by the way, Trudeau sold to China, so that they can take our mineral and upgrade it and send it back to us after they've burnt a lot of coal to do it. Somehow this is supposed to be good for our environment. We should be the fastest place to grant responsible mining permits so that we can harvest these resources here in this country. And that's what we will do in order to allow for electrification. It is by green-lighting green projects like that. We should also speed up the approval of nuclear power. Clean, green, emissions-free, small modular nuclear reactors and can-do production will allow us to have solid, emissions-free baseload production. It is through this energy abundance that we can bring down costs and emissions at the same time. But it will only happen if we repeal the insane anti-development laws that we have right now. But let me be very clear with you. It will not be a free ride for the resource corporations who have proposed these projects and then sat back and done nothing to convince people of their benefits. They are going to have to stand up and fight. Because frankly, when I meet with resource companies in Ottawa, they come to Ottawa, and all they do is suck up to the Liberal government. They have no backbone and no courage, and they don't fight for their workers. I want to see corporate leaders actually fighting for their workers and fighting for the paychecks instead of sucking up to the very people who are blocking these jobs and destroying our working class. I'll give you an example of this. There's another tax hike coming. All the taxes that are going up on April 1st, it's enough to drive a man to drink. But they're taxing that too. There's a beer tax going up on April 1st. So the Association of Beer Producers is running an ad, and they say in the ad that Ottawa is raising beer taxes. And so I asked one of the CEOs, I said, who is Ottawa? I've never met him. What does he look like? Handsome guy, tall, fluffy hair, baby blue eyes? Like, who is Ottawa? Why is the ad saying Ottawa is raising beer taxes? Ottawa's not raising beer taxes. Justin Trudeau and the NDP are raising beer taxes. And I know a lot of corporate leaders don't want to say things like that because they want to get along with everybody. But sucking up to the people who are doing the damage has only got us into this mess in the first place. So it's time for the business leadership to speak the truth and stop sucking up to the people who are doing the damage to our country. Because I can tell you the workers on the ground and the customers who are paying the bills, they're ready for their leaders to champion them at all levels, and that is what we will expect. That's the Canadian dream. This is the country we love. It's not the country we see when we look around us today, but it's the country that we're going to restore. A country where hard work pays off, where people feel safe in their neighborhoods. And as bad as things are right now, when we look around us today, it's easy to forget how good they were and how much better they can be. So let me briefly paint the picture of the country that we will restore. It's the picture of children safely skipping off to school, their parents not worried about their safety, of seniors waving to shopkeepers as they drive home with affordable groceries in their trunk and change in their pockets, perhaps passing a cenotaph where local Legionnaires plant fresh flowers in honor of the community's heroes. It's a community where at 8 o'clock, sure as has ever been the case, the sound of kids playing street hockey and parents yelling that it's time for bed, kids yelling back they just need 10 more minutes, and then finally the quiet and the calm as a young couple sits on their front porch of their brand new home with a Canadian flag hanging from that porch, admiring their paycheck and looking into each other's eyes in a way that can only mean we did it. The promise has been kept. It was worth all the sacrifice because finally we're home.
Maggie, what do you think?